it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We talk running, fitness, mental health, and so many more topics. As the founder of a youth running program, I approach all of our conversations with our youth athletes in mind and kind of have a focus around those things. But as you will see, we are finding that all of these topics relate to runners and people who like to move and do fitness or anything like that. Relates to everybody. Check it out. In today's episode, surprise, we do have a guest. I know I told you that it was going to be just me for a couple of weeks, but already we have a guest. So hopefully that is a fun surprise for everybody. We have Beth Baker, who's a certified running coach, talking about not only coaching, but also her running journey. She has coached over 2,500 people, who a lot of them were either beginner runners or even people who did not run yet and became runners. So she talks all about really working with people, building a really awesome community. She talks about her own running journey and running experience, which is always, as you know, fun for me to really dive into. She talks about her running club, the coaching, the virtual coaching that they do as well. She talks about her podcast, just lots of great stuff, related to running, the cool places that she's run. I definitely have some things to add to my bucket list. So hopefully you enjoy listening to us kind of just chit-chatting about running. Start recording. So here we go.
All right.
If you want to just tell us a little bit about you, and then obviously we'll probably end up talking all about you for the rest of the episode.
It's all about me.
Yeah.
I am Beth Baker. I am a running coach, running coaching company called Running Evolution. And we coach people who've never run before to start to run, or people who hate running to start to run, or people who used to run like 30 years ago to start to run again. And we've been doing it for about 16 years and coached almost 3,000 people around the nation to start running, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah. Well, so when I saw that statistic, I was like, am I reading this right? Like 2,500 plus people? That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a time where it was a culmination of, when you start your business, you should start it in a recession and have it during when the Groupon days were happening. And that was we just had like this huge turnstile of groups that were coming in, and we did 2 groups a day at 25 people per group. And it kind of got crazy. Then we started doing virtually, and then having a DIY running coaching, so people listen to like a podcast and have a whole schedule. So it just kind of got crazy.
Yeah.
But it's been 16 years as well too, so it's a lot. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, like, how long did it take to establish all that? That is a lot.
Yeah, it was we had a nice little we had a couple started off with 2 or 3 runners, and then it got bigger because Title IX, which is a women's sportswear company. I used to work for them when I lived down in San Francisco. And I knew the owner, and she found out that I was coaching up in Seattle, and she's like, hook this girl up. And she started sending my information out to all of her customers.
Oh, wow.
So that was a big push too. And then Groupon, and then it's just been like one thing after that, which has been great. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice waves.
So I definitely want to talk about that, but first I want to talk about you. And actually first I want to talk about Seattle, and I don't even have like any specific questions. So I've been to Seattle once. It was like a place I always wanted to go. I went maybe like a year before COVID started. And while I was there, I was like, I am moving here. I am obsessed with this place. It is beautiful. I love the people. I love the energy, all the coffee shops, like everything about it. I was obsessed. We did a run, not on Mount Rainier, but like a nearby. And it was such a fun race. So tell me about Seattle. Have you lived there like a long time? What are your favorite things about Seattle?
It's a Seattle show. So you're probably here in the summertime.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was April, May-ish,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. It is I've been in a few places around the world. It is one of the most beautiful places in the world in the summertime. Blue skies, green, white caps of we have a sound, which is like an inlet, like an ocean inlet, and then the lakes, and there's just water everywhere. Bald eagles. I mean, it's just like, and it's kind of nuts because I remember seeing like a bald eagle, and there's whales, and they're like mountains, and like on the run. This is on the run, and like this bald eagle was grabbing the salmon out of the out of the sound. It was just like, holy crap, I live here.
Right.
And I mean, I went for a run last week, and there was a bunch of people like sitting on the shore, and I'm like, oh, what are they looking at? I'm like, oh, there's some orcas out there. There's a whole pod of orcas. They're just swimming by, just I'm like, oh, I gotta go run. I've seen orcas before.
That's
And
crazy.
it's a little magical. So but during the winter time, it gets like the sun is set, and it's set at about 4 o'clock, maybe 3:48, and then it will come up tomorrow around noon.
Oh my
It,
gosh.
not really, but it
Oh
feels
my
like
gosh. I
it.
was like, what?
You're in Alaska. And then
Right.
it's really dark. Like there's a cloud cover. So the sunshine is kind of missing here. But during the summertime, it is amazingly beautiful, and we drink a lot of coffee because of the winters. Lots of
Yeah.
coffee.
I guess you would need that to be like somewhat energized when it's like it's
Yeah.
just dark
Yeah.
all the time.
Running and coffee are just like that saves my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now that I've geeked out on Seattle a little bit, I'm sure nobody else like cared to hear, but it sounds beautiful. It was beautiful when I was there. I always am like,
It's
I
a
need
great
to
place
plan
to
my
run
trip
too.
back.
It doesn't get terribly cold. I mean, it's supposed to snow tomorrow, but it's probably for like one day. And yeah, it doesn't get snowy. It doesn't get too hot. It's great.
Yeah. I was gonna say I
Yeah.
have pictures of us like on somewhere on the mountain, but like we're in shorts, but we're in like with a snowy part. And I'm like, this
Yeah.
is just, it was so cool.
And Mount Rainier is like so friggin' big. I mean, it's like it's a big volcano. I'm just like it doesn't you don't see it every day, and every time you see it, like, oh my god, it's so big.
Right.
It just sticks out of like, oh, yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy. So you started running as an adult.
Yes.
People who've listened to the podcast and anyone I talk to always hears me be like, I'm fascinated by people who start running as adults because
Oh,
I've been running forever and
yeah.
I honestly can't imagine, even though I've talked to people about it and I'm always asking people about it, but like it seems like it would be so hard. And
Yeah.
it's
And that's
perfect
why
talking to you because that's like what you do.
yeah, and that's why I coach people, because I had so honestly, Tori, it was I jumped out of my first day of like out running, and I wanted to do a 5K. Actually, I wanted to do a marathon. That was my kind of big goal. And I ran like 2 blocks, and I came home, started crying. I just thought there was something wrong with me. My dad was a runner, um, and not competitive, just like like a 3 mile a day runner. And I'm like, why can't I do this? Because I was like gasping for air, and my boobs were just going everywhere. And it was just awful. And it was like a lot of shame. I felt like a lot of like weird shame that I'm like, why am I not good at this? I was 26 when I started, and it was hard. It was just really hard. And I'm stubborn, and I wanted to keep doing it. So I kept running like little by little, and like giving up, and then restarting, giving up, like that whole period. And for about a year. And I did my first 5K after a year. And after like 6 weeks after that, I did my first half marathon. So I was so interested about that little like 3 mile spot and people's running, because it's just so hard to get past that, because your body's warming up, the endorphins haven't even like come to the table yet, and you just feel awful. I mean, every runner I've talked to, they're like, the first mile is just crap. And so I coach people to get past that area, and for them to like feel the feelings of what the after that feels like.
Yeah. Did you run by yourself when you were starting?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I started. I had a little. I'm not sure how old you are, but I had a little yellow Walkman with tapes. I lived in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and just kind of run out there in my tie-dye shirts, and yeah, just started running, and cotton pants, everything you're not supposed to wear.
Right.
Yeah, 4 sports bras on top of each other. True story.
And I'm sure you remember your first 5K very
Oh
vividly.
yeah, I still have the shirt. I just gave the shirt to my son because he'll be 16 tomorrow. But I gave it to him. He wore it for like 2 minutes.
That's funny.
And it was a because I'm a total museum and science dork, and there was a big, huge, beautiful museum of science in the Golden Gate Park, and it was for that. And it was there's a comic strip called The Far Side, which was it was a really fun comic book for me, or comic for me to read when I was a kid, and they had like Far Side characters all through the thing. So it was like all the things that I liked about it, except for the running. So like I'm going to do that, but I need to know how to run first. And I cried I cried like a little girl at the end of the 5K, and I didn't cry after my first marathon.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I really didn't think I could do it. I really didn't think I could do it.
So it was happy tears.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes.
I was gonna
Yes.
say it could be anything, right? Like my feet are bleeding and this was the worst thing I ever did.
5K. I hope not. Gosh.
I mean, you never know, right? You're wearing
Oh
cotton pants. You could have been wearing,
that's
hiking
true.
boots or something,
Yeah.
right?
Stilettos.
Yeah, right. Exactly. See? So then, okay, happy tears after your 5K. What made you want to run more distance? Was it just like that's kind of your attitude? Like you said, you were stubborn, like, okay, I need to just do
Yeah.
more. I got to tackle the next distance.
Yeah. I had quit a lot of things in my life before that because they were hard. And I just, it's like, like early 20s kind of mentality. I never was an athlete growing up or anything growing up. I was just kind of bopping around, not doing, just nothing, nothing really significant, or never dedicated myself to something because, just being early, being young. And I'm like, wow, if I did a marathon, that would be something hard. I would do to myself on purpose, because I've had hard things happen to me, but nothing I've chosen. And like seems like such a lofty, lofty goal. And so before I started running, I'm like, I want to run a marathon. And I'm like, oh, I have to start to learn to run. And yeah, so I did my first 5K, and I did my first half marathon 6 weeks later. Because I knew I could do it. Like the first, it was the hardest thing was the first 3 friggin' miles. And then I signed up for my marathon a year after that, and I did my first marathon. Yeah, like almost a year after I did my first 5K. And then it was like off to the races and just kept doing them. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And then at what point were you like, I need to help everybody who's not a
Yeah.
runner be like this?
Not everybody, but people. Well, I moved to Seattle, and I had a hard time finding community. Because Seattle, one thing about fun Seattle is beautiful Seattle. They don't, well, back, this is a while ago, 16 years, 17 years ago. Um, there's people all knew each other, so there was no like inviting new people into the groups kind of thing. And so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start my own running group. And I had a couple of people that were like, how did you start running? Because I know you did not run and now you're running. So how did that happen? I'm like, I know, right? It's so weird to think like that. I mean, people just knew me that not being athletic at all. Um, so I had a couple of friends just join my group, and um, I had a life coach at the time, and she's like, well, do you want to start your own business doing this? I'm like, yeah. So we did, and I started my own business, and I got pregnant after that, and I got laid off after that. And then after all those things, I started it full time.
Wow. That's so cool. Um, so I'm looking at the little like one sheet kind of thing I got. And one of the things that I see on here is talking about how our primal response to running makes it hard to start the habit. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I hadn't heard that until maybe even like probably a couple months ago when I was talking to, um, who was I talking to? PTs that work with runners. They were talking about the importance of warm up, but they had mentioned that when talking about the warm up and like prepping our bodies and our brains. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so that little spot I was talking about, I was being really interested about that like little weird spot before you get good at running, why you hate it. And it's very weird because like you talk to people like they hate running. They hate it. They don't hate volleyball. They don't hate, basketball. It's a very like primal thing. And I was just really interested in why that was, because I had the same kind of feeling. And of course, there's the shame of like not feeling in like you're in shape, because it's a such a specific feedback, loop when you're like running and you're out of shape, and you just feel all of that. But when you're running, you the primal Neanderthal switch goes off in your head that you are in danger or that you are chasing something. And so it's the fight part or the flight part. So like a fight or flight. So if you're in a fight, um, your hands get sweaty, your brain kind of gets dumped out, and all of the blood gets out of your brain. And so the flight part is the same thing. Like your brain just kind of has these alarm bells that go off. And if you don't know any better, and there's no like modern context to that, you just think that this is hard and this is scary and this is stupid, or however you justify it. So if you know that, and you know that this is just my Neanderthal brain freaking out, you can distract yourself or calm yourself down, go slower, talk to people, and then kind of get over that and like know those bells and whistles are going to calm down after a while.
Now, how long do you typically see for people who, I guess, like can be aware of like, okay, I'm hating this, but it's not for any reason other than that? Like, how long does it usually take them to get to a place where like, okay, I figured out how to turn that off and be able to now just enjoy running? Is there like a standard time it takes people, or is it
It
just like very individual?
it's very individual, but I think that once you get those endorphin rushes and like and I mean there's a couple tools I tell people to do to really focus on how you feel when you're done, and like that will basically take your brain through that tunnel and show you the good spot. So there was a interesting study, the New York Times put it out a few years ago, that they put people on a treadmill who had never run before, and they strapped their head with like the neurons and or the patches and to scan their brains, and like all of the danger areas in their head were just turning red, 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 red. And then they put people who had run before, even it had been decades, and it was all green, 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 green. So you don't know that it's going to get better. Your brain doesn't know. So it takes. I think I always say like it takes 2 months, maybe three, of consistency and retrying and just having those consistent endorphins just dump in, dump in, dump in. So you know that you feel good afterwards and that your brain can like start to crave it as opposed to like procrastinate.
Right. Do you ever come across people who, I know maybe this just like person doesn't exist, but like really want to do the running, want to be a part of running, want to be a runner, but just really struggle with like the negative thought and being like, well, I can't do it. I'm not
Oh
a
yeah,
runner. I,
all the time. All the time. Yeah. And
where
a
do you
lot of it,
start with that?
it's a lot of self-talk, a lot of I mean, it really is like I'm like a therapist. I mean, I'm not a therapist, but I feel like a therapist because I've seen it so many times, and I mean, it's so I have such different personalities, and it's the same personalities that keep showing up, so I know what to address. And I always just ask God, why? You know, why? Where did you hear this? Where like sometimes it's a coach, sometimes it's their mom or their grandma or their father, that they have just like stamped on their head that they couldn't do this. And so we have to kind of debunk that and unravel it and see if it's really true. And if it's maybe it served a purpose back when you're in high school trying to get out of gym class or whatever. But if it doesn't serve you now, then you don't need it anymore. So you can kind of throw it to the curb and go run.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm now thinking, and it was probably in my early 20s, I read, I don't even know if it was an article or just like the headline of something. And it said like for female runners, their peak distance performance is going to be like when they're 28. And like after that,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of starts to decline. And I remember thinking that and being like, oh my gosh, I have so much time to, really get into my running and all that stuff. Right. And now I'm like, okay, I'm on the other side of that now. And like occasionally it does get into my head where I'm just like, oh, I'm like past my peak of running. What even can I do with that? Or like,
Yeah.
like you can't then progress or like, oh, I could have been so much better at the next thing. Um, but I imagine you work with people who are just starting goals, in their 40s,
Yeah.
50s, 60s of like, they don't have any, I used to run a 2:30 marathon,
Yeah.
3:30 marathon, and now I want to run something else. But how do you help them like set realistic goals when like, do they come in with their own goals? Do they, and I
No,
guess like my
it's
sob
about
story had nothing to do with that. It was just me wanting to be relatable or something. But yeah, like, I'm like, oh, I was so sad that I'm not in my peak running performance anymore. But
But also, I want to debunk that because I don't think that's true because um they haven't observed female athletes that long, so they don't know. And
yeah.
that's the thing that kind of pisses me off. I'm sorry, but like even I think like I'm seeing these ultra marathoners now, these women ultra marathoners who are coming really close to passing men.
Yeah.
And because of, we're smarter, we have high pain tolerance. I mean, all these things. And that I think we've been just told that we couldn't. And I think there's going to be a point where we're going to start passing the guys on all these ultras because they just haven't done the studies and it hasn't been, we haven't been doing it very long. They thought our uterus is going to fall out like 40 years ago.
It's so crazy.
So yeah, so there you go. I mean, you never know. So there's that. So but I did have a woman who she stopped running when she was like in college, but she was coached by Bill Bowerman and Eugene, who started the little company called Nike.
Just a little
And
company.
yeah, and she was so fast and she wanted to be that fast again. And she stopped running. It was like it was the funniest thing because I'm like, there's no way. And also too, I don't coach people who to get faster. But she was just so like at Arrested Development. She was just so stuck in that time of her life. I'm like, you're not that person anymore. You've had kids, you've grown into this amazing person. You have this wisdom now. And she's like, well, I'm never going to be fast. I'm not going to run. And I'm like, okay, bye. She left. But
Right.
yeah, I mean that doesn't happen very often. Like coach people to like use their bodies and experience their bodies for where they're at this time in their life and to see what it could do and how cool that is. I mean, like I have like one of my good running partners is just started running when she was 50. I started running when she was 50, and she is in Antarctica right now doing a 250K staged race. It was their third stage 250 stage race this year.
Oh my
And like
gosh.
she did one in Namibia, she did one in like Argentina. Um, and she does these for fun. But she's like 57. She's like not, I mean, she's not that old. And she just does them for fun. She just turned out she's an incredible athlete and she just never knew. So I mean, like that's fun too. You're like, you just don't know. And like what you're told or what you think society tells you isn't necessarily true. So that's it's just interesting.
Yeah, no, and it's also funny, like the things that we fixate on, right? So I'm saying, like, I can still vividly remember this article about being 28 being your peak,
Yeah.
but then it's like, as soon as you bring up female ultra runners, I'm like, yes, Camille is what,
Yeah.
40, almost
That,
40.
I
And
don't
it's
know.
like,
Yeah.
she's at her peak of, well, I mean, who knows if it's even her peak, but like, she
Yeah.
is just crushing all these records. And, I feel like every time I turn around, I see her running a different race. And I'm like, how, recovery is crazy fast.
Yeah.
And, yes, it's just funny too how we like can forget, right? It's like
Uh-huh.
I start fixating on something that I remember from years ago, and now I'm like, oh yeah, there's all these
There's
examples here of like
so
what I
there's
can
proof
do.
after proof after proof after proof, and the media is run by white males. So you gotta look for your heroes in a different spot because it's not in the articles. You gotta look for the. I mean, now you can like you can see the Courtney DeWalters and Camille's. I mean, just like they're just out there among us, and it's so cool to see that. I love that.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about your is it a running club? Like what do you call your running evolution? Like
Oh
people who
yeah,
meet up?
people
Are they a club?
runners. Yeah, so we have a
Yes.
club. Yeah, runners. Well, it's funny too because like how long it takes for people to call yourself a runner. Like with these new people who are just new to the sport, they're like, "Well, I'm not a runner yet." I'm like, "You just ran a half
Right,
marathon
like didn't you just run? I
yesterday.
saw you.
I saw you run. You're running. You're a runner." Uh, so yeah, we have a club in Seattle, but then I started doing actually in January before the pandemic. I started doing virtual classes, couch to 5K classes across the country. And when the pandemic happened, I couldn't do the in-person classes, so we just went all virtual. So that's all I'm doing for coaching to like coach couch to 5K classes. I do a couple in-person classes, but I do most of it is all virtual. And we have group Zoom meetings every week and just kind of share our wins and what's going right and what our the hard part is. And usually it's like hard parts are just like it was hard today and it sucked, and I'm like, yeah, sometimes it sucks but it always feels good to be done. And then we have those that we'll start in January, of course. Yeah, and those are just super fun because it's like creates this community of people who are just empowering themselves, and mostly it's women, which is really fun too because that's my goal.
Now you're in person. I feel like now I'm trying to scroll through. I know I saw you guys meet up a lot. Is that right? Like you have a lot of meetups?
We have we are our club, so we have like a 5K club that just have like it's a running group, that people can graduate after they do the Couch to 5K class. So it's called like our pack, and people can run with us. And it's the paces vary. It's usually it's on the slower side, but we're all super super social, and I like the conversational pace and nothing. It's non-competitive. Just run to run and have fun.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Um, Now do you guys go to like do you have races even though it's non-competitive, but like is it like, oh,
Oh
we're
yeah.
all kind of training for
Yeah,
this
we
race?
have we have 2 half marathons every year, 2 half marathon trainings. We just finished one last Saturday. And we had about 25 women finish that. And it was super just fun to see the people who had never done a half marathon before. A couple of them had just did their first Couch to 5K class like in March and then did the half marathon. So they just kept running, kept showing up, which happens. So they just did it. So it was pretty cool.
And then you have a podcast about running as well. Can you talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yeah. So before the pandemic, I interviewed people while we were actually running. So I put little microphones on baseball caps and we would go out running. Because when you're talking to people when you're running, it's like the conversation's so transparent and you're not looking at each other. So it's just like good stuff comes up. And I really like that idea. So we did that for about a year and then the pandemic hit. And then I started like getting people just on Zoom like we are doing um that were influential in my life, that were just big names, that were just like authors and um uh people in music who happen to run and what they get out of it. So it wasn't like athletes, it was just people who happen to run. So and what like ideas they get from like about music or writing, or just it's just interesting, that was that aspect of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love the idea of running and doing interviews. That is
Yeah.
so cool. Um,
My goal next year is to do like take a van across the country and just hijack people on their runs and put a microphone with them and just start talking to them um
oh my
about
gosh.
life.
Yeah, that would be so cool. Oh my gosh. Well, if when you do that, please send the info to me so I know where to find it because
Okay.
I want to hear. That sounds so fun.
Yeah, I went to school for audio engineering, so the podcast platform was like, oh, of course I'm going to do that, because it's just been super fun, hence the big microphone.
Right, exactly. That's why you had to dig through all the microphones to find the best one, right? Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Yeah, I had met this woman who told me we were just talking casually about running because I have a kids running club.
Yeah, right.
And so
Yeah, I saw it. It's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. So we were talking about kids running, and she's like, "Oh, well, I run." And she was saying that her and her business partner get on the phone whenever, if it's every day or every other day when they're running, and for like their 6 miles, they talk on the phone the whole time. And I was just like,
Yeah.
that sounds so cool. Like,
Yeah.
I love that. Like,
Well,
I
I
need to
used to
find runner people to talk to on the phone.
I know. Well, I just get so many ideas, and I love that. I mean, even like on my runs, I like have ideas for like an article like to write or something like that. And it's just it's so fertile. It's such a fertile ground. And just it just gets all bubbly, and I love that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel like I talked to someone else not too long ago who was talking about, I don't know if they were talking about for a podcast or a book or whatever, but their ideas were like the problems you solved while on your run or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, right. It's like instead of like shower thoughts, because I know people always get into like all
Oh,
the things they figure out in the shower. It's like all the things you figure out on a run, like it can
right.
solve all of your problems. Just go for a run.
Yeah, I thought that, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to interview these people, because I thought it was going to be the same for everybody, and it wasn't. Like my friend Mike, who's the editor at Wired magazine, um he was just talking like when he runs, I mean, I because he's such a smart guy, and he's also a musician too, and like, what do you think about when you're running? He goes, nothing. I'm like, nothing is nothing, like it is empty. And I'm like, what is that like? Because
Right.
I'm like, that's so crazy. He goes, yeah, I can listen to music, but usually I just it's just empty. I'm like, wow, it just seems like so Buddha like, Oh, so I mean, just it's interesting what people's mental space is when they're moving their bodies.
Yeah. So are you a music listener or
Yeah, I'm a
nothing?
musician and I love music. I'm a big music fan. So, and I just started playing bass with a band a few months ago, and yeah, I just like music. So I listen to music a lot when I'm running,
Yeah.
and books about music,
Oh
and
my gosh. Okay.
yeah. So I can dork out all day long on that.
Is bass, you said you play bass, right? Are you
Yeah.
talking bass guitar?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. See, I played cello. So when you said
Right.
bass, pictured,
Right.
and I was like, where are you taking a bass to play? That is so interesting. Bass guitar makes a lot more sense, though.
And some people read bass and like, no, it's not a
Oh, yes. No,
bass.
I'm not playing a fish. Thanks. Uh, so you've always been a musician?
Not at all. I just started like a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah.
so bass guitar is your thing. Do you have other instruments you're into too?
Barely learned the bass. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, just getting on the just practicing a lot and seeing how it goes. And I've got really, really patient and wonderful bandmates who are like, just do this. I'm like, okay, got it.
sure.
Luckily, bass is like you can just kind of get away with like a chord progression and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a
Nothing fancy.
favorite kind of music to play?
We do like a little bit of bluegrass. There's a mandolin and I like honky. It's like a honky tonk band right now, but right now I'm just so happy to be there and happy to learn. I'm really just having a ball doing it.
You're like, I would play whatever kind of
Yeah,
music
I
you
do.
want. I'm here. I'm in
Right.
it. Oh,
What do you
that's so
think, Beth?
cool.
I'm like, I'm just having a good time.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, favorite kind of music to listen to when running. Do you have a favorite then?
Oh yeah, I like I there's like a couple bands I really really love to listen to, um and but like just like any kind of blues music, or like old soul like Otis Redding, Sam Cooke, that stuff is just it just makes me feel really yummy. Aretha Franklin, um and I have like Spotify lists that just play the same thing over and over again. You know how like when you're running when it's hard, you just want to hear something comfortable.
Right.
So you don't want to hear anything new. You don't want to
You're
hear
like, I
anything
need that
scary.
same song. Where
Yes.
is it? Yep, here we go. I get 3 minutes now of like something I'm familiar
Yeah.
with.
And sometimes I like sit at the kitchen table, like wait till the song comes on. I'm like, okay, then we can go. We have a great radio station up here in Seattle called KEXP that has really, really great music, and you could just put it on and they stream it.
Oh,
So you can
cool.
listen to it, and they just play a solid, especially in the morning. It's like old, I'm almost 50, so all that great 80s and yeah 90s music, it just hits my heart. So
Yeah.
it feels like I'm dancing when I'm running to good music.
Right. I know I can like picture in my head of like, and I don't listen to music anymore when I run, but I used to all the time. And it would be like, I feel like I'm in like a music video, but not like a cool music video,
Oh
but it's
yeah,
like, you
totally.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're just like, I
Oh
can picture like the soundtrack of me running and looking so cool. And but
yeah, and then I
now
fall on my
I don't.
face.
Yeah, right. And you're like, and now I'm distracted. Yeah. It's like it turns into a comedy where it's like end splat. Like, yeah. But that's
Yeah.
funny. Okay, so I imagine you've had some really great runs or races, but also probably not so really great runs or races. Do you have like either, I mean, a race I feel like is easiest to remember, but like a race or a run that was like really, really challenging and you just were like, I have to, like, you learned something from this though,
Oh
even though it
yeah.
was just so bad. I'm sure I was going to say you're a runner. I'm sure you have
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you don't have bad stories and you're not really try it. You've gotten the lesson you've gotten, and you should just excuse me, sorry. Um, yeah, I started doing ultras a couple years ago, and I just had one. My first trail run ultra 50K up here, and it was just terrible. I mean, nothing bad happened. I ran most of it. I barely finished under the cutoff. But I was just in a horrible, horrible headspace, and I couldn't have music. They didn't allow music. It was a small race, so I was pretty much all by myself for a long time,
Yeah.
all day long. And I was just like, okay. And I'm like, like just like, why am I doing this? Why do I do this? This is stupid. It was just bad. And everyone was asking, was like, how was your 50K? I'm like, it was crap. It was just crap. I mean, it was nothing. I couldn't say anything good about it except for I finished. And there's no way for me to get, I mean, I don't, unless they pulled me off the course, I would of course finish because you can always walk. But it was just horrible. I was just in a bad mental space, and yeah, and it wasn't too long ago. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that for a while. And I had a DNF a few years ago at a marathon, a trail marathon. Um, and I was just completely undertrained for the amount of climbing it was. I was almost 7,000 elevation to gain.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it was up and down like volcanoes over and over again. And like horror, like just big, huge, like climbing technical, and I just didn't eat right. I was just everything, like I stopped a couple times, just cried. And it's just and I got yeah, got in the car at mile 20 and got driven to the finish line and cried some more, and that was my first DNF. So
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like for that one, you already kind of said like a few things you probably could have done differently, right? Like you
Yeah.
said you're undertrained, fueling and stuff like that. But for the other one, your 50K, where you just were in a bad headspace, like, is there
Yeah.
something you took away from that besides just like sometimes it sucks, right? Or
Yeah,
was there like anything?
I think that's what it was. Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
not my day, and I'm not competitive. I don't know I was going to win anything. I get very hormonal like the day before my period, and it was the day before my period, so I didn't know that,
Yeah.
and I can kind of tell because I get kind of weepy, and I just need like a lot more food, and I didn't have the food, um, and yeah, I was just in a bad. I could not get out. I just was focusing on a couple things, and I just like could not get out of it. And like when you're out there, you just have to problem solve how to get your head out of that situation because your legs are fine.
Right.
So it was just terrible. And of course, it was like a beautiful day. It was on another volcano called Mount Baker with like a lake and woods, and I'm like, rah, rah, rah.
We're like, I should be loving this, but I hate that.
I hate everything. I know. And it was just very funny. And I'm not going to do it again, but I would recommend it. It was very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just yeah. If I did it again, I would have to do it with somebody else.
Yeah.
For sure.
I know it's crazy how running with people can totally change things
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. And it's like how you help each other out, and like there's more snacks to carry when there's
I was
another
just about to
person.
say you can steal snacks from the person you're running with.
I know my trail running partner is such a she's just a mom. She was like, you know, everything like band-aids, an emergency blanket, and like 5 different kinds of crackers. So she's great.
Oh, that's funny.
I roll up with water.
Right, you're like, I have like maybe like animal crackers, but I have my water and shoes on, right? I'm ready to go. Do you have a favorite besides probably, I'm sure your first 5K has a special place in your heart, but do you have a favorite race?
I did the Portland Marathon 5 years in a row. Um, and I don't know if they did the same course, but it's a beautiful course. It's very lovely. Um, it just goes through the whole aspect of the entire city. It's nice downhill up towards the end. Nice, well organized. There's music all through the 26 miles, and yeah, I loved it. I'll never do it again because I've done it too many times. And I did the Long Beach Marathon. That was my first one in California. I was pretty flat and along the water. Anything that has water involved, I really, really, really love because I can go in the water afterwards. And that's like
Yeah.
my favorite thing in the world is to run like a huge amount of distance and then go in the water. Because it just feels like a baptismal of what you've done.
Right.
And yeah, so I did one up in Weot, California, which is in the redwoods, and they have these huge. It's they're called the Avenue of the Giants. The race is called the Avenue of the Giants, and it's this like long winding road through these huge, huge trees. so quiet because everyone is just in awe. And you just wind through these huge immense trees for 26 miles, and then they have the Eel River that goes right there at the finish line. So you hop in the Eel River and get yourself a burrito and call it good. So I mean, those smaller races are just like those little like hometown ones that are just so surprising and beautiful.
Yeah. All of those sound like I'm again picturing things in my head, but I'm like, who knows if I even can picture that correctly. But it all sounds so nice. And like now I want to go to all these places and run.
Yeah, that's what I love about like the running part, because like I mean I love traveling and seeing different places, and it's a great way to see a huge amount of area and a very interesting place, um that on your feet and with other people, and you can share it other you can share it, like even if you don't say anything, you both see the same thing, so I love that.
Yeah. Do you have any like race that you are traveling to coming up? Like anything fun planned that way?
I have two race, and I'm not sure the races, but it's a running, um uh I'm not sure what it's called, but it's in Patagonia in Argentina and Chile, and they do a 5K every day down there, and that's in March. And then I'm going to the Azores in May, and those it's an island chain off the coast of Portugal. And they have I'm doing oh, I might be doing the marathon again. That was my DNF from 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So I'll try to do the marathon again.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so cool though. Both of those sound really cool,
Yeah, I'm
actually.
excited. Yeah, I'm excited. The one in Azores, this is my third time going out there, and it's like a little like Hawaii chain, like I mean, like tropical islands, kind of out in Port and off the coast of Portugal, like 100 miles off the coast of Portugal, and they're just like these little villages with amazing food and amazing people, and it's pretty cool.
If you had to pick one thing that's like your favorite thing about running, what would it be?
I think the people, the community, and especially like trail runners, I think, and even competitive runners, and I've met um some like high level competitive runner like Kara Goucher and Lauren Fleshman, and they're really nice and they're very genuine, and because they've gone through some really hard stuff and come out the other side, and um the, I just I think anybody who does something like gets their ass kicked over and over again, from anything they do, um I mean if it's running it's running, but it kind of rubs their whatever kind of confidence, not confidence, but ego away from them, and they just love the sport, and they just are really kind, and um in like trail running too, like the higher level, the 50Ks and the 100Ks, they're just out there for other people, and they just want everyone to succeed and love the sport. It's just a cool sport.
Yeah, no, and that's actually it's funny because I always say the same, well, not the exact same thing, but if someone ever asks me, yeah, I'm like, I have the exact same answer. That's always my answer to them is like the running community is like you find runners and like they're almost always going to be like people you can relate to. They're great, they're genuine, they have a passion that you understand, and yeah, like they've been through stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I always that's always my thing too. So it's always funny when someone else says community, but then it's also like what you feel about the community, and
yeah, yeah. And I
it's
mean,
pretty cool.
I've met some jerky ones too. They're
Yeah.
usually young, and they just don't really push themselves, and they're hot on whatever they're good at. And I'm like, oh, you just wait till you get your ass kicked or you get older. And but if they're kind of like posturing for who's faster, and I'm like, it's not about. I mean, not for me. It's not about who's faster, and because I'm not fast at all. But I can go out there for a very long time, and and it's just a cool way to see the world with other people.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
totally. And well, it sounds like you've done so many cool races too with people. So
yeah.
um that's really awesome. All right. Well, I feel like actually we've talked for a little bit. Um, and I don't have any actual questions for
Okay.
you. Uh, so I probably should have, but no, I feel like this was super fun and it was great just like chit chatting, and
Oh,
hopefully
thank you. Yeah, you too.
people appreciate that because and actually I was thinking I was going to have this episode be a little later, but because I was for the next, over the holidays, it's just me talking on the podcast.
Oh
So I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
they need a little break of just me talking, but
Yeah.
actually I've only had one episode of just me, and I think I'm going to release this tomorrow because I don't have an
Okay.
episode yet for my tomorrow. So sorry, everybody, this is your break from me, and then it's me for just a couple more weeks talking about running. So,
Which is also really great. Which is also really great.
yeah, well, I feel like I do much better with guests and
Yeah.
like a focus. But everyone will have to deal with that. So, but I really appreciate you coming on here. Can you tell people where to find you? I'm obviously gonna put the links in the notes, but
Oh,
it
sure.
always helps to hear
Yeah,
it
I'm
too.
at runningevolution.com. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter, which I think is still a thing.
Yeah, for now, right?
I know for now at running evolve, and on Facebook at Running Evolution. Beth, or it's Beth at Running Evolution because that's have to be fancy. So, but yeah, it's a great community, and I love just kind of breaking down like, you can be any size and any age and you can run. Which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I love that message because I feel like that's really what people need to hear, right? Like we were saying, like people who say that I'm not a runner, and it's like, yeah, everybody who runs is a runner.
Yeah,
right? And even if you
out.
don't run yet, you can be a runner if you just want to run, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, sometimes people need help. I needed help, and it's and there's absolutely no, I mean, if you can ask for help, then you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
That's what people, so coaches are for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I love that. And I will be looking forward to hearing whatever kind of audio version of you coming to people while they're running and chatting with them and recording it. I will be looking for that whenever you do that. So
Yeah.
make sure not to forget me.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was
Thank
really
you
great.
so much. Thank you very much. I sure appreciate it. Have a good night.
I just want to thank Beth again so much for taking the time to talk with me, especially when maybe I wasn't super prepared because I didn't have a whole bunch of questions to ask her, but I really it was great getting to talk running and all things that go with running with her today. That was really fun. So hopefully you also enjoyed that as well. All of the links to find her are in the show notes. So you can find her club as well as the socials and all of that. Definitely check it out. Really awesome stuff. Yeah, hopefully you enjoy that. I have some runs, like I think I've said already, to add to my bucket list because a lot of those things sounded super cool. Also just great advice on not only for like myself or yourself about running, but like how to help other people in running too, and really to help them change their mindset on like you can be a runner, and you just have to get past this hard part and turning off your brain from telling you that you don't think this is fun and this kind of sucks, because I feel like I do hear people say that a lot. So yeah, all that was so great. So it was great to have some time to talk with her and for her to share some really awesome info with us. Don't forget, speaking of running coaching, I am doing virtual run coaching now. So the link for that is also going to be in the notes. We are, I always say we, but it's just me. I have a discount code for all of the listeners for run coaching. It's RR podcast to get 10% off monthly coaching packages through Team Run Run. So check that out. Also, I feel like it maybe has been a week or so since I mentioned our running event for the Youth Mental Health Project. So it feels like it's time to talk about that again. It is in person if you were in the Chester County, Pennsylvania area, but also we're doing virtual run challenge as well. So you have from now until May to be ready to run a 1 hour distance challenge. How far can you go? Should be super fun. Everybody in person and virtually is going to get a t-shirt and then whatever swag comes with that from all of our amazing sponsors. Our 1 hour run challenge is sponsored by Shine Nutrition in Westchester. So again, for you local people, check them out for some teas and smoothies. It's super awesome. Heather is great, so check it out. But also, yeah, I mean, it really is just going to be hopefully a really fun running event. And supporting the Youth Mental Health Project. Anybody who's listened a lot knows that mental health is really near and dear to my heart, especially for the youth in our community and kind of just everywhere. But so they provide resources, education, and support for families in regards to mental health for kids. So even if you don't want to participate in the event, check out our sponsorship page if you have a business and you want your business to sponsor, or if you just want to throw a little donation their way. I know that'd be really helpful to them. I know currently they're working on getting some new educational resources for everyone, I think, to try to be more inclusive to all communities. I know they're trying to get some things printed in different languages as well. So yeah, definitely help them out with that. It's really awesome. And check out the event, because even if you're not local, we do have a Strava group, so we'll be able to track everybody's progress, and it should be kind of fun, and it's not a super expensive running event in comparison to a lot of the other ones. So, if you're free mid-May, check it out. All right, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe, all the things that you can do for a podcast that you enjoy listening to. Make sure you check out social media, our website, any of those things. If you have questions, comments, interview requests, feel free to email me at marikeyrunclub@gmail.com.